I'm Polly Warren and welcome to the Positive Perimenopause podcast. This is the place for some positive inspiration to help you through the rollercoaster ride of perimenopause. I truly believe that with the right support, knowledge and wellness tools and a large dose of inspiration, this life phase can be a truly exciting and pivotal time of life. With every episode, my mission is to support and empower you to own your menopause, because it's never too late to start taking care of the most important person. Yes, that's you. So thank you for being here and sharing your time with me. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Gosh, I can't believe a week's already zoomed past. I hope you're all doing really well. So this week, oh goodness, it's been a busy old week and actually a really busy old weekend. Here in Brighton in the UK, during the month of May, we have the Brighton Festival and Brighton Fringe Festival, which basically means there are so many brilliantly fun things going on. And it's all lots of concerts, lots of art installations, lots of crazy things going on. And this weekend, I really experienced quite a few of them. And what was just so brilliant is that it finally feels like things are back to normal since COVID, and it feels so good. And this weekend, I seem to do an awful lot of dancing. I mean, I'm not the best dancer, but I love music and I love dancing, and there were some really fun things going on. So yes, it was all good, although feeling slightly tired this week, but it was all worth it. Anyway, thank you to those who listened to last week's episode with the lovely Emily Barkley, and it's been really good to hear your feedback about that episode. And also, it was really good to hear your thoughts about cycle tracking and the power of cycle tracking. And actually, it appears that lots of you already do track your cycles, so that was really good. So on to today's guest. Today I've got the wonderful Karen Newby. Now, Karen is a nutritional therapist. She's based in Brighton here in the UK. And Karen specialises in women's hormones health, especially perimenopause and menopause. Karen's worked with hundreds of women experiencing menopausal symptoms over the past 11 years. And she's seen firsthand how powerful food is in treating symptoms such as sleep problems, mood changes, hot flushes, weight gain, anxiety, and so many more. Now, Karen is very much a complementary practitioner. Although she believes in natural solutions, she often works with women on HRT too. What I really love about Karen is that she's very much a realist. So her recommendations are always easy to incorporate. You know, she really is a great believer that it's not what you take out of your diet, it's what you put in that can have the biggest impact. Because we should never underestimate the power of food as medicine. Karen's wealth of knowledge is remarkable and truly inspiring, and there will definitely be so many practical takeaways for you throughout this conversation. So without further ado, I really would love to welcome and introduce you to the amazing Karen Newby.
Hi Polly, lovely to be here. Nice to see you.
Thank you for coming. So Karen, today I thought it would be brilliant if we can tap into your vast knowledge of nutritional therapy, hormone health, and menopause and perimenopause. For first question I've got, the fact that you've been practicing nutritional therapy now for, is it over 10 years?
Yeah, it's 11 years now.
11 years, wow. And one of your areas of specialism is women's hormone health, especially perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, really, what made you want to specialise in this area? Was it because of what you were experiencing yourself at the time?
Interestingly, 11 years ago, because I work a lot with children in my practice as well. And when I first started out, my children were very small. So I always loved working. I love working with women anyway. So I was always working with women and then working with their kids as well. It follows my life stage because now I'm in the throes of perimenopause, and I'm still working with children, often teen kids, but also babies as well, because perimenopause, we're sort of, you know, a lot of my new mums have suddenly had a child in their early 40s and bang, stop breastfeeding and then straight into perimenopause. So, or we have that heavy mix of teenagers in the house. I mean, it's full on, isn't it? We're incredibly busy. So I suppose I love working with women, and I love helping I've always loved helping women with their periods, for example. It's so wonderful to see someone that has been struggling for years and maybe decades with period issues. And then suddenly, they don't even realize when their period's coming, the sort of the scheduled day, and they have no PMS. So it kind of moved on from that, because I do see perimenopause as, a big stage in women's life, and it's an empowering stage. And I love working with women at this stage because I help them gain back control. And I know that sounds a bit like a sort of a Tory slogan there. But that's what I find so empowering. And I've always found that throughout the whole journey of women's life, either that empowering them to trust their instincts as a mother with their children, which I think is really important, knowing, that we do have that for those of us that have had children. To work. And I've been working in sort of perimenopause since about 2018. I was doing retreats then, and obviously then COVID hit. But it's wonderful because I help women on this journey, and suddenly they start making life decisions, and it's an exciting time. So yeah.
I love that. I mean, that word empowering is it's bounded around a lot, but actually exactly what you've said about gaining back control of what is happening during perimenopause is empowering. And I think what's so sad is that so many of us don't know what is happening during this perimenopausal phase, just because we haven't got the information, we haven't been educated about it. So we feel anything but empowered. So to be able to give that control back to women so that they can feel empowered really is so fantastic. And this is why we're all doing the work we're doing today, because we really we don't want women to suffer unnecessarily. Yeah. So I suppose one of the questions I've got is, because perimenopause can creep up on so many women, including myself, it crept up on me, I didn't know anything about it. I think it would be really super useful today to talk about some of those early signs of perimenopause, because if women in their 30s and their 40s know what to look out for, then we can prevent so much of this sort of needless energy wasted on not knowing what's happening, on to and fro visits to doctors and specialists.
Yes.
So that women can then take control of what is going on. So absolutely. Karen, what would you say are some of those early signs?
And well, the biggest ones I see in my practice are psychological symptoms, actually, because as we all know, your symptoms, your periods you can be regular cycling for, 4 or 5 years into perimenopause. So for a lot of us that know a little bit about perimenopause or menopause, we think, this is when our periods stop, or when the cycles go out. And I would actually say that's the second stage of perimenopause. The first stage is often not the physical symptoms, it's the psychological ones. So an increase in anxiety is a big one. And often for women who have never suffered with anxiety ever, suddenly are sort of blindsided by it. Why am I overthinking everything? Why am I lying in bed wired and tired and with a really busy head and finding anything to worry about? Low mood is another one. So, and depression, and I think this is where a lot of GPs, when women go to a GP and say, it's really worrying. You only go to a GP if you're suffering with low mood, if you feel like, oh my God, I don't feel like myself anymore. And if you're in your early 40s, you think, I'm not 45, which is what the NHS kind of, line in the sand is, which is very much an arbitrary age. It's a number. It doesn't mean anything. We're all individual. And just because you're 45 doesn't mean to say that it will start either. You can be starting later. Although, I understand why the NHS have done it, but from an individual perspective, obviously nutritional therapeutics is individual based. It's not protocol based. You have to sort of, those lines are blurred. So low mood is another one. And this is when often women will be prescribed antidepressants. And in the NICE guidelines in the UK, you shouldn't be prescribed antidepressants if you're around that age, if you've never suffered with depression before. And that is definitely something for women to go armed and, sort of print it off if you need to go to see your GP, because actually we all need to understand that actually that low mood is to do with dips in estrogen. And anxiety is due to dips in progesterone. So, those hormones have huge, far-reaching effects on our physical health, but also our mental health as well. So I would say they're the two biggest things, yeah.
And just in terms of the hormones, so at this stage, in those sort of early perimenopausal years, what is happening is actually it's actually the progesterone first, isn't it, which starts to gradually decline. Yet the estrogen is still relatively high. And I think a lot of people don't fully understand that.
Well, actually, what happens is that we can actually have what's called a sort of a hyperstimulation of estrogen at this stage, when the body is like one last gasp of like, oh, need to get pregnant, heaven forbid. But, so that hyperstimulation, which actually can affect the ratios between estrogen and progesterone. And actually one of those signs of hyperstimulation of estrogen is much heavier periods, which I think a lot of women start to feel, even though they're still cycling normally, or their normal cycle around 28 days, but their periods get much heavier. And the reason they get heavier is because estrogen is proliferative. It increases cells, and it can increase the cells of the inside of the uterine lining, which mean then you've got a heavier bleed. But progesterone is also seen as the period lightening hormone. So yes, there's a reduction in progesterone because of the estrogen dominance, we call it. But there's lots of estrogen sensitive conditions out there, such as things like fibroids, because it's proliferative estrogen, endometriosis, cysts, any cysts on your ovaries or on your breasts, and obviously sensitive estrogen sensitive breast cancers, to name a few. So this is what's happening, is that the estrogen is going mega, but also sometimes we're not always ovulating. So as our eggs start to sort of decline and the ovaries start to quieten, we don't always ovulate. And if we don't ovulate, we don't then produce this little sac, which is called the corpus luteum, which is in charge of creating progesterone in the ovaries. So this is where the anxiety kicks in. And, I've had women who have phoned A&E thinking they're having a heart attack, because this kind of heart tachydermia and this, this can also be caused by these changes in estrogen and progesterone. Dips in estrogen can cause the blood vessels to dilate. So I think just for me, it's all about not educating, but sharing this knowledge so that women know what's going on in their bodies, so that they don't think that, so that then they can think, okay, this is a hormonal thing. It's not me suddenly losing motivation. So losing motivation is linked to estrogen. And finding no joy in things that they used to find joy in, I think, is a really big thing. And then one starts to look around and think, well, am I not married to the right person, or am I not in the right partnership? But actually it's your hormones. Goodness. So it's important to speak to partners about that too.
I relate to every single thing you just said, because every single one of those things you just said was my experience. The low mood, the anxiety, the heavy periods, the heart palpitations, all of it. And, I didn't know what was happening, and it can be really scary. And you're right. Once we have this information, it just takes away that fear. One thing, just to talk about the heavy periods, because I do think so many women just accept that is normal and live with them. What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, the thing is with heavy periods is that we can lose a lot of iron. And the problem is that it becomes a bit like a catch-22. If we're losing lots of iron, this can actually cause more heavy periods. So because iron is needed to constrict blood vessels, and if they're not constricted, the flow will be much heavier. So it is a catch-22. But I work a lot with women with heavy periods, even before perimenopause, by helping to balance estrogen and progesterone to support progesterone. synthesis to help that, the balance. And one of the biggest things that I find works really well is to increase phytoestrogens in your diet. And these aren't estrogen, although, I'm not anti-HRT, but, I'm working from a naturopathic perspective, and all of the things that we'll talk about today, you can use quite safely with HRT. It's whatever journey you're going on is fine. But phytoestrogens are, in loads of different foods. They're not the same as xenoestrogens. They don't build up in the body. They're protective. So things like soy, organic soy, yogurt, sajada yogurt, I really like. So it's not the sort of the sweet stuff in Outpros, etc. Ground linseed. So soy. So that's all your tofu, tempeh, miso, edamame beans, soy yogurt. And then you have another group, which is the lignans. And lignans are the best source of lignans. Another phytoestrogen is in ground linseed. And I get mine really fresh from this farm in Sussex, a linseed farm, which only lasts 3 months. And it's absolutely wonderful. You put that onto your porridge or onto your bircher or onto your granolas, 2 heaped tablespoons a day. And that really helps to... it helps the body when estrogen is very dominant. So when we have those kind of hyperstimulation of estrogen, it actually blunts the more sort of potent forms of estrogen onto receptor sites, and stops so much high estrogen.
In terms of estrogen, just to be really clear, so people are really clear, because there's one name which is given to all of these estrogens, which is obviously estrogen, but there are xenoestrogens, which are not the not so helpful type of estrogens. And then there are the other estrogens, which actually are the ones in our body which are helpful, which are the ones which decline during menopause, perimenopause.
So xenoestrogens are from our environment. So they are things that are coming from parabens and plastics, and through pesticides and herbicides, through our food chain, basically. And whereas phytoestrogens, they are found, as I say, in huge amounts of food. And and obviously within the body, you have, estrogen coming from your ovaries. The dominant estrogen that we have when we're menstruating is called estradiol. And then we have a weaker form of estrogen that's made in the adrenal gland. So we'll come to later, which is why stress is such a big issue at perimenopause, because I need those adrenal glands, little glands that sit on top of the kidneys, to be working for us, because they become our ovary backups. But they are a much weaker form of estrogen. So I just think with phytoestrogens, the other big group, so within lignans, you have brassicas, which also have loads of phytoestrogens in, but they also have wonderful other chemicals called indole 3-carbinol, which helps to detoxify estrogen and get it out the body. So we often think that, at perimenopause, we just need loads and loads of estrogen, but actually more isn't necessarily more. We just need it in the right format, but we need to be able to detoxify it. So that's another big area. All of these foods, the more of these foods that we can eat, the more you will get that balance back. And I see it time and again in my practice, even women that are cycling normally that aren't even in perimenopause, that suddenly their heavy periods go.
So just to recap, for anybody at this early stage thinking, right, what can I do? Eat more soy products. And that's obviously the unprocessed type of soy.
Yeah, and organic if you can. Organic, untextured soy. Make friends with tofu if you can.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't like it. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Just do the lignans, which is, your brassicas, your ground linseed.
Yeah. And brassicas are things like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, that sort of whole family, sprouts. Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, what about the weight gain, the sudden weight gain, which obviously lots of women really struggle with? Can you maybe just tell us a little bit about why does that happen at this stage as well? A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
So again, it's all down to these hormones. And I think for a lot of women, it's really frustrating because our usual kind of weight loss toolkit doesn't work anymore. toolkit that we had in our 20s and 30s. And that's because we have these kind of hormonal roadblocks, which for any of you that have gone on sort of a healthy eating kind of program with your partners, male partners, I would say, the weight comes off them really quickly. It's really irritating because they don't have these hormonal shifts that we're experiencing at this time. So the problem is that estrogen, dips of estrogen actually affect our ability to process sugar. They make us more insulin resistant, which doesn't mean that we're becoming diabetic, but it does mean that we need more insulin to process the glucose that we're getting from our food. And insulin is our storage hormone. So this already, it's our metabolism is changing, but there is much that we can do. Also, those dips in estrogen affect where our weight is going. And, you know, estrogen it makes us everything that is what is being female, and a waist, for example. And this is why we lose the waist a bit and the fat goes around the middle more. It's because that's more of a male pattern of weight gain. So actually testosterone doesn't really fluctuate. I mean, it does go out of whack because of other reasons, but in terms of actually perimenopause, with the testosterone itself doesn't really change much, but it can be affected by our lifestyle and the food that we are eating. But you know, those ratios again go out of whack, and then we start to get this male pattern of weight gain. But also this weight around the middle is also associated with cortisol, stress hormone. It's called the worry waist. Traditionally before perimenopause, but at perimenopause we have this other layer. Perimenopause comes at a time when we are really, really stressed, and we're really stressed for a number of reasons. We're having, for those of us who are having children, we're having children much later, so we've got small kids in the house, or we've got teenagers in the house. My mother went through perimenopause when I'd left home. I'd gone through university and I'd left home. She was 23 when she had me. You know, I'm 10 years older from when I had my kids. So it's a completely different ballgame. Yeah. Secondly, we're often working full time, you know, and also at the top of our careers because we have got it all now, which is great. But, you know, we are paying the price physically and mentally for it. We can't keep pressing that, you know, our survival pedal the whole time. And this is why I love working with women at perimenopause, because suddenly they've realized, oh my God, I have to look after myself for the first time often in our lives, because we as women, regardless of if you have children or not, are looking after everyone else except ourselves. So yeah, it's
yes, and
interesting time.
It really is an interesting time. And I love that when you said, you know, we've got to take our foot off the survival pedal, because I think if you do have children, or if you are working your way up a career ladder, you are, during your 30s, you are generally really playing hard in all areas, you're working hard. And we come to this point in time in our 40s where we're still trying to do it all. And I was exactly the same as well. And I see so many women still really pushing it really hard, and yet these perimenopausal symptoms are becoming worse and worse, and often it takes for the symptoms to become so bad before they actually take that foot off the pedal. So what can we say to these women who actually you know, really it would do them so much benefit to really start looking after themselves? Because this is my message as well, it really is time for self-care. If you've never put yourself first, which many women haven't, this is the time to do it.
Absolutely. And, you know, our life load means that we are so untethered from our natural rhythms. And, you know, this is why, you know, pre-menopause, when I'm working with women to tap into their cycle, to harness the power of their cycle, to understand and give themselves permission to rest at certain times of their cycle. And then when you do give yourself permission to rest, you feel so much better for it. But we just don't, for whatever reason. I really don't know if that's a society thing or just how we're built. But going back to sort of biochemistry, if you like, for me, stress, menopause symptoms love stress.
Yeah.
And the adrenal glands, these tiny glands that sit on top of the kidneys, are in charge of kicking out our stress hormones, but they're also our ovary backups. And even though the body will keep going in times of acute survival, it will be at the detriment of other systems in the body, which is why, we know that stress downregulates our reproductive system. We know that when in the past, when we've been super stressed or overtrained and things like that, that our periods stop or they go out of whack because survival trumps sex hormones. Mm-hmm. So your body will still be producing a little bit of, the estrogen and progesterone coming from your adrenals, but also testosterone is made in your adrenals and these androgens. So if we're constantly stressed, they will still be produced, but will they be produced, in volumes? I mean, it's one can't tell, but I would say if you have a low life load, you will go through, it will only benefit you in lots and lots of ways. For example, you'll sleep better as well. However, we can't do anything, I can't do anything about my patient's stress load or life load as a nutritionist, but I can help her adapt to it better. So that's from my perspective as a nutritionist, is to help her body adapt to high stress. And the easiest way you can do that is to, there's a couple of things. One is to look at your caffeine. So basically, every time you have coffee or tea, you are putting your body into stress mode. So, for some of us, we can metabolize coffee very easily and it doesn't affect us. For me, I'm a slow metabolizer of coffee and caffeine. I'm now decaf, and it's made such a difference to my mood and to my afternoon energy. Caffeine upregulates our liver massively. And, the liver is so important at perimenopause too. So watching your caffeine, or only having caffeine with your breakfast, to have it with food, like alcohol, if you have caffeine on an empty stomach, it has a greater effect. So that would be my first one. And then secondly is to balance your blood sugar. And the reason is because at this stage, we're becoming more insulin resistant, like I've said already. We're starting to get sudden weight gain. And a lot of that has to do with the way that we're handling blood sugar, we're handling sugar. So for me, it's about when we have a high of sugar, if we eat lots of sort of tea and toast, or, refined carbohydrates or caffeine, caffeine affects your blood sugar as well. We get a super high, we feel great. We're like, we've got loads of energy. And then the flames of energy go really tiny. And then we start to get that shaky, faint, clammy, I need to eat now, I'm hangry. And if you're depressed or if you're anxious, you exacerbate those feelings at that time. And then you're not going to reach for a bowl of broccoli. You're going to reach for more caffeine, more biscuits, more, dairy milk, whatever, to get the blood sugar back up. But the thing is with blood sugar is that every time our blood sugar goes low, the brain cannot deal with those loads of blood sugar. So it triggers cortisol and adrenaline. So even though you might be super stressed externally, you're increasing your stress hormones internally because of these blood sugar roller coasters. So this is giving those adrenals more work to do. But also every time you have these roller coasters, you're depleting the body of energy nutrients like vitamin C and B vitamins. And this is why we are incredibly fatigued at this time as well. So,
and that's often when you get the slumps in the afternoon as well, isn't it? When you really do lack that energy, and also why your sleep suffers so badly at night.
Absolutely. So protein is key with every meal and snack. Having eggs for breakfast, enjoying a big breakfast, being mindful of breakfast, but having breakfast is so important. Having, if you have porridge, then putting some cinnamon in, which helps with blood sugar handling, adding in those ground flax seeds, ground linseeds, which are a great source of protein. Having low sugar granola, those granolas out there that are so high in sugar, it's ridiculous. Or making your own granola, you can make up a massive load. but making sure that, instead of those sort of sweet biscuits and things, that you've got falafels in the fridge, or you've got hummus in the fridge, or you've got, miso soup sachets or edamame beans, or, some sardade yogurt that you can have with some blueberries, just stuff like that, that will anchor your hunger and give this nice drip feed of energy, will help you feel so much more in control. So caffeine, blood sugar, and then you can increase what's called adaptogens in your diet. So these are things like turmeric. Actually, turmeric has been researched to help with mood as well, to help with serotonin and mood, and things like supplements that you can get with ashwagandha, holy basil, Agnus castus is really good if you've got a lot of rage going on, a lot of anger. So these are all things, maca, ground maca, and maca is supposed to be good for libido as well, that you can add into your smoothies. So these are things that, and licorice, so these sort of blunt the cortisol response on the cell receptor site. So they're things that you can look at as well. But I have to say, blood sugar handling is something that is something that I work a lot with clients on, because it affects us massively, physiologically and psychologically.
Yeah, it really does. What would you say to those people who, because I totally agree, having a good breakfast in the morning is key, and it sets you off on the right path. If you have a good breakfast with lots of protein, then it does really keep your blood sugar, you start as you mean to go on. What would you say to those people who are wanting to do some sort of fasting? Because I know of a lot of people at the moment who are not eating until 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, because they feel that the fasting is doing them good. What do you think about that?
So for me, and often with people that are fasting, they're drinking caffeine. So if you're drinking caffeine during that fasting window, you've broken your fast. You've basically stopped fat burn and you've stimulated insulin. Because what happens is that with the caffeine, it stimulates the fight or flight response. So what it does is it mobilizes stored glucose in your liver and some in your muscles to zoom around the blood and send lots of energy to your brain and to your lungs and to your muscles and to your heart, to basically do something physical, which you can kind of get, can't you? If you have too much coffee or tea, you get that sort of jangly feeling. But in essence, you've tricked the body into thinking that it's had something to eat because you've got blood glucose is risen. So that's what I mean. It sort of takes you out of a fasted state. So, but for those people that aren't doing any of that, then I recommend, for me personally, it would be if you're doing, are these people doing like a 16-8?
Yeah.
So an 8-hour window. I would rather people have a good breakfast, a later lunch, and getting their sort of evening meal in sort of 5 or 6 o'clock. Much healthier, because you're giving yourself the fuel that you need mentally and physically in the day at the right time, as opposed to, we don't need. And if you're doing that for weight loss, you'll find that you'll lose weight more, because actually what happens is that we'll eat all of our, main meal, all of our sort of intake of food towards the end of the day. And then that's just stored as fat because we're not burning it off during the day. Yeah. So, I recommend at least a 14-hour, a 12 to 14-hour fast overnight. You can have water, you can have herbal teas. It's something that is quite easily attainable for us, for any of us. If you can, doing fasting exercise when you wake up also helps massively with fat burn. So it's just, having your breakfast at 9 and then, evening meal at sort of 6 or 7, that's really workable, but you're still giving your body a really nice 12 to 14 hours rest, because don't forget, the liver is part of the digestive system. It digests fats. So it's really nice for the liver and the gut to have that, rest. So at least 12 to 14 hours. But if you are doing longer, that 16-8, for a lot of people, they just use it as a way to skip breakfast. Yeah. Whereas they're not hungry. I want people to feel hungry when they wake up. And for many of us, we don't feel hungry because we've eaten our evening meal too late and it's sat in our stomach, and we wake up not feeling hungry because it's still there, which is why then their reaction is to have a cup of tea or coffee or a slice of toast, which, is shooting up their blood sugar, and then and then it sort of all continues, really. It's a bit of a catch-22.
Yeah, exactly. On the subject of adaptogens, going back to adaptogens, I think lots of people can become quite confused when it comes to adaptogens, because there are so many out there.
Yeah.
And then certain adaptogens, such as ashwagandha, for example, you're told not to take if you're taking other medication, I think. Is that right?
Well, if you're celiac, certain ashwagandhas you can't take. Yeah, they're not gluten-free.
So what would you recommend if someone, I mean, it's probably best to come to someone like you, a nutritionist, to actually really get a personalised...
Absolutely. So yeah, adaptogens and any herbs, they are strong, you know, the sillymarins, the milk thistles, they are quite, I would always recommend you take them alongside seeing a herbalist or a nutritionist, because they're full on. I mean, they're great because they do the job, but they're not to be taken mildly. I would say for anyone listening to this on medication, if you're taking supplements, then please get in touch with a nutritionist like myself, who will do a contraindication check. Because absolutely, there are some medications that you shouldn't be taking with adaptogens. And certainly if you're on things like SSRIs, you need to speak to a health professional about that. Definitely.
And Karen, I've got a question about HRT. So for someone who is on HRT, and the messaging out there at the moment about HRT is that you can be on it forever, and it's actually doing you more good than harm, because of it helps prevent osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease. What are your views on it? And I know that you're a naturopath and you do things naturally, and I know that you do work with women on HRT. When you hear those messages going out there, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, a few things really. Some of the messaging out there is not correct in terms of, focusing in on when your ovaries quieten, that's it for estrogen and progesterone. There's one in particular that I can think of where it said, the HRT is there to, put in, like, for example, if you have low thyroid, you would take thyroxine. Well, that's completely different. That is pathology for a start. And absolutely, if your thyroid is not working, then you need to take that, like with metformin and insulin. But, menopause isn't a deficiency disease. And it's basically a roller coaster ride, which is why I think, it's great that HRT is there to help women get through it and to not feel guilt when you're taking it either. But there are other tissues in the body that do make estrogen and progesterone, like the adrenals and, peripheral fat tissues, for example. So this kind of notion that when your ovaries stop producing it, that's it, you need to take these synthetic meds in order to replace them, that is, there is a bit of messaging that is a bit in that gray area, and I'm going to shout that out and say that's incorrect, because your body, it's about allowing your body to get used to lower levels, which HRT can help that transition, because some people go through, it's like childbirth, we all have completely different reactions to childbirth, and it's a completely natural process. So that's my take. And also, when we're talking about preventative medicine, in my opinion, it is about food and lifestyle and vitality, and the power of a therapeutic diet to bring about health change is immense. So I suppose that's always been my take anyway, and the menopause is no different. So, modern medicine is amazing, and, I'd be absolutely useless in an A&E department. But chronic disease or lack of vitality is something that, once you get that sorted through medicinal foods and therapeutic foods and lifestyle, you can actually reduce your risks massively of cardiovascular disease, of Alzheimer's. Osteoporosis, for example, is absolutely something that we are all more prone to post-menopause. So there are definitely estrogen links with osteoporosis and Alzheimer's. Many more women than men go on to have Alzheimer's. So absolutely. So I get where they're coming from. There is definitely an estrogen link. So, from a medical perspective, it's like, well, if we give more estrogen, then that sort of negates that. But from the way I see it, it's like, well, if you start feeding your brain, if you start sorting out your blood glucose, Alzheimer's is coined as diabetes of the brain. If you start eating more alkaline forming, beautiful vegetables all the time, not only are you getting your, brassicas, your phytoestrogens, but you're also getting all of these minerals that are needed for our bones, not just calcium. So that's how I see it, really. I know that's not very precise out. It's interesting watching the communications at the moment. And I think for a lot of women on HRT, they come and see me, they understand that it's fixed a few things, but it's not going to fix everything. I think for some women as well, they don't know what to do and how to fix lack of sleep, for example. And insomnia lack of the sleep stats of perimenopause are dreadful. And if you don't sleep well, you wake up stressed, you can't do your job properly, you can't spin all those plates. And I think HRT does really quickly help sort out sleep. So I totally get it. Yeah,
let's talk sleep, because it is one of the biggest problems for so many, and is one of those early signs, isn't it? When your sleep starts to be interrupted, it might be that you can't go to sleep, it might be that you're waking up in the middle of the night and then your brain is racing, you can't go back to sleep, you wake up feeling absolutely exhausted. There are so many knock-on effects then to your day and then to your other symptoms. So Karen, maybe you could just tell us, we did touch on this earlier, just why is that happening? And then what can we do? What can we do to really help ourselves?
Yeah. Okay. So again, estrogen and progesterone are involved with neurochemicals in the brain that are also involved with our sleep. So this is why it gets much worse. So estrogen is involved with serotonin, which goes on to make melatonin, which is our Dracula hormone that comes out at night to help us bring on restful sleep. And progesterone is actually linked to progesterone is linked to GABA, which is a calming neurochemical that is needed for us to get into the light sleep, which then moves into the deep sleep, which then moves into the REM sleep. So it's really important for allowing us to get into sleep. And this is why, progesterone and estrogen, as you take it as HRT, that's what it's doing. It's helping those interactions. But there is, a lot that can be done. So also the other reasons why we have sleep issues is we're waking up with hot sweats, we're waking up with aches and pains, and we have that anxiety thing going on. So there's lots of different reasons, lots of things going on. My biggest thing is, tomorrow starts today. Everything that we're eating and drinking today affects how we sleep, which affects how we feel tomorrow, which affects what we eat and drink and how we sleep the next night, if you see what I mean. So you have to sort of manually change it up. And I think for a lot of women, we're so stressed that we sort of are hoping for a better outcome every single evening and every single day, and it never comes because we're just chasing our tail, basically. So there are definitely things that you can do. Caffeine is one of them. If you have a lot of caffeine, start reducing it. That will help your hot sweats. That will help, although night sweats can be to do with lots of different things. But hot drinks, generally, coffee is one of them, big triggers. If you're getting hot sweats as well, start to do a diary to see what foods are your trigger. Alcohol is a big trigger. And actually, alcohol becomes less helpful the older we get as well. And that can really affect sleep. And the thing is, a lot of my clients will use alcohol to get to sleep, but it forces you into a very deep sleep. And then the body wakes up and thinks, it can't quite work out how it got there. And then you're awake. So we need to do the processes of sleep, from that light sleep to deep sleep. It has to happen. Otherwise, it becomes disjointed. But also alcohol is liquid sugar. So this can also cause this blood sugar dip in the night, which increases then cortisol and adrenaline to wake you up. And that's coming back to blood sugar. This will help you sleep. And the other reason blood sugar helps you sleep is because when you have that lower blood sugar, adrenaline and noradrenaline is released, and these are vasodilatory hormones. So this is why we often wake up with a night sweat. So if you sort your blood sugar, that will not only help with your anxiety, wired and tired, it will help stop you waking up in the night, and it will help reduce night sweats.
Goes back to blood sugar. It's all about balancing blood sugar. It is one of the
It's
most
a really
important
big
things.
thing. I mean, blood sugar is a massive thing anyway for any client that I see, but it becomes even more focused in because the estrogen insulin metabolism change link.
Yeah.
So, but also things like reducing tyramine rich foods before bedtime. So these can really increase noradrenaline, which is vasodilatory. So these are why they can trigger hot flushes. So these are things like bacon, cured meats, red wine, cheeses, especially the sort of the blue cheeses, fermented foods. So these sort of kimchi and kefir and sauerkraut, they are great for our gut. They give our gut good bacteria, but for a lot of us, they can be completely contraindicative and cause flushing. And actually, for anyone that has sort of a lot of histamine things going on, which can happen at perimenopause, this can exacerbate that as well. Okay. So reducing those sort of tyramine foods that are very excitatory before bed. But also, again, going back to protein, one of the essential amino acids that we only get from our diet is called tryptophan. And tryptophan is needed for melatonin and serotonin. So if we're not eating a lot of quality protein-rich foods all the time, because we don't store protein in the body, we don't have sort of pools of amino acids like we do fats or sugar, we need it constantly. So that's another reason for more protein.
If we're not getting enough nutrients through our food, will supplements pick up the slack?
Always with food, it's food first. And if you've got a great diet and you still feel on a low ebb, then you need to come and see someone like me to sort out your digestive function, because we are what we digest. And actually, if you can be having the best diet ever, but if it's not being absorbed, if it's not being assimilated into cells and eliminated properly, then it's a complete waste of time. So that is something to look at. But that aside, it's food always first, because there's that saying of, there's no such thing as a vitamin C tree, that, with vegetables, for example, you're getting an abundance of vitamin C, but you're getting an abundance of folate and magnesium and zinc and iron, and fiber, which all equal, all have different jobs to do as we consume them. Whereas a supplement, that will give you the sort of component parts. I mean, there are some great supplements out there, but yeah, and I'm very much about I do take a lot of supplements, because we are so stressed and our world is so different from our life load is so high. And if you have a high life load, that is affecting your nutritional status. So yes, I do take.
Are there any supplements that you recommend across the board to any perimenopausal woman?
Well, I definitely recommend a really good multi-menopause supplement. BioCare does a great one, Menopause Multi, which is really nice, high potency. Wild Nutrition do one, Cytoplan do one, Viridian, all of these brands that you would find in an independent health food store, which we do have an abundance in Brighton and Hove, but wherever you are in the country, it's rather than a Holland and Barrett, it's really nice to support independent shops, and also in independent health food stores, they know what they're talking about as well. They've chosen those brands for a reason, and they're usually the sort of the brands that are in the right format and in high potency. Then I would recommend, if you don't like oily fish, for example, I mean, I love oily fish, but I still take an omega-3 supplement, which helps any sort of cracked heels or bobbles on the backs of the arms, or, skin generally, hair. But omega-3s are very anti-inflammatory. So very good if you're getting those aches and pains at night.
That was an absolute game changer for me, having, I think, what have I got? BioCare, it's high in EPA. DHA, amazing. Yeah. Honestly, that has completely changed. I had so many aches and pains, terrible back and hip issues, and my nails were brittle. And once I started taking that, it really, really, really helped.
And I think that's the thing with supplements, is that if you get it right, it's like, wow, that really helps. And these are naturopathic. They're not, it's not, medicine as such. It's just, giving your body a little bit extra. Because don't forget, for those of us who have had children, we give all of our omega-3 to our children's nervous system. I mean, that's why we have baby brain and a foggy head after having children, and why our eyesight deteriorates, because there's sort of DHA in our retina. So, we need to up our stocks, and aches and pains. So menopause is well documented now as an inflammatory phase, which is why those aches and pains get worse, because annoyingly estrogen is involved in our immune system. It's an anti-inflammatory, so you kind of figure that with peaks and troughs of estrogen, that's when those aches and pains get worse.
Gosh, Karen, you always amaze me with your incredible wealth of knowledge. You really do you're like a walking, talking dictionary of amazing knowledge. It's incredible. Sorry, not dictionary, encyclopedia, that's the word. What I'd like to know, just to finish off with, is about you, really. I mean, how have you personally found this stage of life? It doesn't sound like you've really suffered through it, or is it because you've been walking your own talk? And have you found it tricky, or what's your experience of perimenopause?
Yeah, so I think I found it trickier in my early 40s, actually, when the mood swings and all of that kind of kicked off, or flying off the handle for really small things, which was like, oh my God, who am I turning into? But then, because I'm living in this world of hormone health, and, I kind of knew that things were changing, because I do listen to my body, and have done for a long time now. And I think when you tune into your body, you kind of then, you can then allow yourself to be okay with it, as in, we're going to get this sorted kind of thing, to be kind to yourself. You understand that you're going through a lot of change, very stressful with the children, etc. But I think because, although, I nipped it in the bud, so I then swapped my multi to a menopause multi. I added in, I was always eating brassicas and phytoestrogens anyway, but I made an effort to eat more. I take a really nice female balance multi by BioCare, which has, brassicas and sage and all of these things micronized into it. Because my periods were still normal for, 4 years regular, but they became heavier. So that, I knew this was all happening. Doing your homework. So anyone listening in their late 30s that have periods that are a bit out of whack, and allowing yourself to get your periods right will really help your transition. So my periods have, been bang on. I get, I've got rid of any PMS. My period just arrived. And I think that's where I want all women to be. Why should we spend decades suffering with our periods? Because we're not allowed to talk about it. It's always quashed down. Even when you come on for the first time, it's like, oh, you can't talk about, you have to just deal with it, suck it up. And I think our daughters of today will go through menopause so much more openly, and as we're starting to see that happen now. Yeah. So yeah, it's really about looking after yourself as early as possible, and whenever you want to, whenever you lock in, when you start putting things in practice, it will help. And it's, who knows, maybe in a few years' time, I don't know, I'm a sort of experiment to myself, and my clients are, they're not experiments. I see it happen in my practice the whole time. Women feeling great and not being on HRT, or being on HRT and feeling great as well. That's fine, whatever your path is. But for me personally, I want to do everything I can naturally. But that's my opinion, and what I want to do. So I feel that, yeah, it's working. Yeah. Although who knows, in a couple of years' time, I might be whacking on the patches, etc. And that's fine too,
Yeah, exactly. So just to finish, I really want our listeners to go away with you've given them loads of takeaways throughout the whole of this conversation. But if you had to give just one practical, actionable takeaway, what would it be?
Just one, that's difficult. Probably because of, if you're a real caffeine junkie, I would say just have caffeine with your breakfast. But if you're not a caffeine junkie, I would say eat breakfast. There we go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Karen. Karen, for anyone who wants to come and find you, watch some of your really, really informative videos on Instagram, or to actually come and work with you, where can they go and find you?
I'm at karennewby.com, and then my Insta is karen.newby.nutritionist. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Karen. I have really, really enjoyed chatting to you today, and thank you so much. My goodness, there's so much juiciness in this conversation, and I really do recommend that you go over to Karen's Instagram to find out a little bit more about her. She posts some really fantastic, informative videos and some good posts. So yes, go and do that. Go and give her a follow. And if you want to come and follow me, you can come and follow me on Instagram at Polyron Coaching. I always love to hear your thoughts and views on the episode. Plus, if you want to get in touch, you can come over to my email. It's info@polyron.com. And if you feel like it's time to really start feeling amazing again, feeling great, feeling like your old self, because let's face it, that's what we all want, then I would love to hear from you, because I love, oh, there's my dog having a shake. I love to help women like you find a way to feeling like yourselves again. It is truly possible. Anyway, have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.